Hello and welcome to another edition of Digital Dialogues from Maritime Gateway. Today, our guest is Mr. Sunay Mukerjee, who is the Chief Operating Officer at APM Terminals Mumbai, which is also known as Gateway Terminals India Private Limited. Sunay has more than 19 years of experience in international business, strategy, sales, business development, procurement, and general management in transportation and logistics segment. He has been with AP Moller Group since 2003 and has held leadership positions across Europe, India, Middle East, and Africa. Prior to joining APM Terminals Mumbai, Sunay was the Chief Commercial Officer at the Suez Canal Container Terminal, Egypt, where he was instrumental in the terminal's business growth and expansion. Sunay is a Merck's International Shipping Education MISc graduate 2003 batch, holds a graduate degree in science and completed his master's degree in business administration from Symbiosis Center of Management and HRD in Pune. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and joining us today, Sunay. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege and an honor to be here.
So let me begin the conversation to break the ice. So you have traveled across different continents and you have seen a lot of terminals. So after taking over as a Chief Operating Officer at APM Terminals, how has been the experience in the last 9 months or so?
Well, cannot complain. It's been fantastic. It's only the calendar that tells me that it has been 9 months. It feels like it's just a few weeks. They say time passes fast when you're having fun, and there is a lot of action taking place at APMT Mumbai and GTI. As you're aware, we have a lot of action going on in terms of upgrading ourselves. We call it the Fit for Future project, and I guess we'll speak about it in more detail later. At the same time, we are constantly on drive of improving efficiency. Even within the APM Terminals portfolio of terminals, which has more than 40 odd gateway terminals, GTI or APMT Mumbai is looked at as a trendsetter, and we're trying to constantly be on this journey of going from good to great. So it's been fantastic.
Wonderful. So there are a lot of things to be picked up from your response, and then maybe we'll get deeper into that. Give me a perspective of the container trade in general, because I have been hearing from a lot of people that the demand seems to be still subdued and then it's not picking up. So what is your experience as far as the container volumes are concerned?
So I think we have to look at it from a trade perspective. And also the fun part about a terminal is we are very much location dependent, which at times gives you advantage, which at times can be disadvantage. In our case, and I'll start the response from a narrow perspective, focusing on the entity or the terminal that I'm in. So Gateway Terminals of India, APMT Mumbai, we are, of course, part of JNPA, located in Navasheva. Northwest India, to be honest, has had the privilege of seeing growth, and that has continued. So if you see the numbers for JNPA as well as for the overall Northwest India, volumes have actually been steady and strong with year-on-year growth being visible from a port level perspective. We also at GTI, of course, have been doing very well from our volume perspective, although we have been operating only one berth since February this year. Logically, being at 50% would have been a good achievement from our numbers perspective. We have actually been at more than 70% of our numbers, which is also kudos to the team's high focus on efficiency and creating this opportunity. At the same time, the volume is there, which allows us, to deliver those numbers. So Northwest India is a little cocooned, if I might say, from what you see in the overall global industrial perspective. From an overall global container trade, as you correctly pointed out, the numbers have softened during the perspective of this year. If I'm looking at APMT's global portfolio, then YTD, we are around 4 to 5% softer, right, compared to the same period last year. Expectations are that while things are expected to have normalized, there is hope that we have seen the bottom, and now we will see stability and growth. Q4 heading into Christmas is always an important part, because then for the Western trade, you get to see whether the demand is picking up or not. that would be important for us to observe and see whether there's a bounce back in at least a plateau that we can reach now.
So you just mentioned that you have been operating only one berth. I think that is because of this lot of upgradation that is happening at
That is
the
correct.
terminal. So can you give me an insight into what exactly is that fit for future? So what does it mean to the ultimately the end customer, and what kind of equipment or a technology advancement that is happening at APM terminals?
As you know that we started operating in 2006 and our lease agreement started in 2004. Part of the lease agreements that have been signed, there is a lifespan that has been committed at a point of time when you have to replace equipment. So very theoretically, why did we get into the project, or why did we need to get into the project? It was a lease agreement requirement where we had to change equipment. There is a certain number of our STS, or the ship to shore cranes, that were operating, we needed to change, and also our RMGCs, which handle our rail cargo, we needed to change. Then if we're just changing them, why are we calling it fit for future? That is because we decided that we will not do a like for like change. We have to look at what is the industry's requirement, what is our customer's requirement. And this is where the customer is the customer on the key, which is the shipping line. Over the period of time, the vessels that are coming in to the northwest part of India have been getting bigger and wider, more importantly. The customers have a very keen interest with all the new capacity and tonnage that is coming into the market to also deploy bigger vessels in India. Our old cranes could only handle 18 wide. So they were not capable of handling the biggest vessels that call northwest part of India, where you need to be at least 23 wide in order to handle those vessels. They also by default make the cranes taller to at least by 10 meters. Similarly, on the rail front, if you see in the news, people are moving, and we are moving from being single stacked to double stacked. Our old RMGCs, the height did not allow. In the future, if we have the option also of double stack trains coming in, we did not have the equipment to handle it. So we thought that when we get a chance to replace, we don't do a like for like, but we upgrade. So that is one of the reasons why this project is called Fit for Future. It is an investment of close to 840 crore Indian rupees that we are putting in this project. It is not just about bringing in all the new equipment that we're talking about, but at the same time, also looking at our internal processes to drive higher efficiency and make it even better from our customer experience perspective. In order to accommodate these new equipment, the higher cranes, the wharf at are also needed to be upgraded. So we're also changing the fenders and the boulders on the wharf so that the bigger vessels, higher displacement can be accommodated. We will have the capability of handling 2 large vessels within our 712 meter key length that we have. So we are artificially, if I may call it, stretching the key length. We are adding a dolphin moor at the end, which allows us to bring in even bigger vessels in berth 1. Now, in order to ensure that the truck movement continues in a safe and high efficient manner, we are extending our southern bridge. So there is a lot of civil work that is currently ongoing to upgrade the capability. This is also looking at increasing capacity by default by doing this, but also further increasing safety, which is our license to operate.
In terms of capacity, what is the expectation once the whole upgradation is completed?
So GTI or APMT Mumbai has been always around 2 million TEU capacity. The intention is we increase that by 10%. So our capacity will become 2.18 to 2.2 million TEUs once we complete the civil work part of the project as well, which is expected to be completed by end of January, early February. And then we are able to accommodate 2 large vessels simultaneously with high productivity.
If I'm getting right, the whole exercise will be completed by Jan and be ready.
Correct. There are 2 parts to the whole project, 2 key milestones. Milestone 1, we actually achieved last week on 13th of September, when we reopened berth 1 for operations. So all the new cranes have been put back into operation. We had the first vessel calling on 13th of September. We actually have another one calling starting day after. So now we are getting back into operation. The operation right now in berth 1 cannot be the largest vessels to that we want from an LOA perspective, because we still have the civil work ongoing. That civil work will get completed by end of January, early February, when the additional capacity by default becomes available to us.
So there was, I think, a lot of disruption and commotion because of this upgradation. And now, where the things stand now?
In our books, inside the house, if I'm looking at, it was actually a very planned move. So it was not a surprise that GTI or APMT Mumbai would, go into one berth operation. So with our customers, there has been long drawn coordination and communication that was ongoing. Of course, keeping in mind the capacity constraint that you generally have at Navasheva, when a terminal like APMT Mumbai or GTI goes into a one berth operation, then of course you can't accommodate all the vessels, which leads to a stress on the overall industry. That was there in the initial part. Now, with us reopening, at least that stress will ease out because there is more capacity by default that we are now coming back to. So we are, of course, in dialogue with customers, and we have our pipeline planned of slowly ramping up so that by the end of the year and beginning of the year, definitely by end of Jan, we are in full momentum operation to actually make use of the additional capacity that we are creating.
You mentioned something about safety. I have seen APMT has been taking a lot of these safety initiatives. Even I read somewhere that drivers have been given training into safety operations. So, how important is safety for the terminal operations at APMT, and what do you really processes or implementation to ensure the safety?
So if you look at the global strategy of APM terminals, it is safer, better, bigger. So it starts with being safer. Safety is the license to operate. What we try to call out definitely at APMT Mumbai, apart from being a license to operate, it is our commitment. It's not just our commitment to each other, but it's also a commitment to all our families, right? It is our responsibility to ensure all our colleagues and everyone visiting the terminal goes back from the terminal goes back to their families safe and sound. So it's an absolute commitment, and there is no compromise when it comes to safety. The culture of safety is drilled in, if I have to call it, with regards to our own colleagues. We have a very strong culture. If you see this year, our safety theme globally is something called Speak Up. What it basically means is if you see any unsafe activity, or if you perceive that a particular activity could have any amount of risk, then it doesn't matter who you are in the organization. You are empowered to speak up, you're empowered to stop work, and you're empowered to problem solve so that when the operation is actually done, it is done in a safe manner. Technology wise, of course, there is constant focus in terms of automation, because that is where automation kicks in. If you see in our gate, which is an area where you have a lot of movement, GTI, when in full operation, sees 4,000 to 4,500 trucks coming in, external trucks on a daily basis. We have implemented an auto gate system with a lot of cameras, which actually has reduced the requirement of people at the gate and increased the man-machine segregation. Now, in that line, because we have 4,000 to 4,500 external truck drivers coming into the terminal every day, that is one of our key focus points, because our own employees, our own colleagues, our own contract workers who are used to working in the terminal every day, they are anyway going through the culture, they're part of the culture, they know what safety means for us. But people visiting us from outside, how do we ensure they understand the same thing? So we have a few or quite a few initiatives that go on. End of last year, we had something called a Kaikaku Kaizen, which is basically a large-scale Kaizen project, which was done focusing predominantly on external truck driver safety. There were a couple of key initiatives that started from it. In the very nice central parking plaza that JNP has created for this, for all the terminals out here, we actually have a porta cabin out there, and we have an external truck driver training center that is located there. So any driver, external driver that comes into GTI, they actually go there and they go through a training of the safety requirements, safety regulations inside the terminal. They are briefed about the do's and don'ts that they have to do. They are followed. Once they have done the training, then they are issued a card. It's a card with a QR code. So whenever any of the drivers are coming into the terminal, the first thing is they scan the card. It's only once they are registered, the card is valid, they're allowed to come in. This training is also done on a refresher basis every 6 months, right? So any updates inside the terminal, they are kept aware of. The second, when they're entering the terminal, they're also handed out what we call a BAT card, a bay allocation ticket kind of system, a big card, wherein they have on the back of the card a layout of the terminal, which clearly states where they have water available, where the toilets are, which are the bays, which are the blocks when they need to move. So we try our best to keep them updated about where they need to go, the traffic management plan. On the back card, you also have two different colors specifically that is there. So sometimes if an external truck comes in and due to whatever inefficiency which can happen, right, they are not served for a long time. So if they're not served for an hour or an hour and a half, there is a yellow colored placard called long standing, and they can put it on. So if that is on, then the yard supervisors who are patrolling, they can see that and ensure the trucks get served by the RTGs immediately. In case they have a breakdown, they also put in something, they have a red colored similar card, which is called breakdown. And then again, the yard supervisor can come in and support them. The main thing that we are trying to avoid is the truck drivers getting off the truck, because that is the biggest risk part. One of the key reason, and good you asked me, because I'll take a few minutes more to just explain a particular project that we've been working on, which we are very proud to say got recognized by APMT globally as the Global Safety Day Innovation Project and was awarded as the Global Safety Project last week. This is also to do with the external truck drivers. When they come in, on the chassis needs to be kept in an unlocked position so that if they're coming in with a container, the container can be easily picked up by the RTG, or the new container can be, placed on the RTG without the lock hitting the container. The problem is, if you see most of our yards, they are paver blocked. So there is a lot of vibration. Sometimes these locks keep on moving due to the vibration and actually shift from a empty to a locked position. A truck driver then, and the whole focus of ours is psychological safety, right? He is not aware whether it has shifted or not. So it causes them to get off the truck and check what is the position, because they are worried if it is moved to locked and RTG picks it up, it might actually lift the bed of the truck. We have a very nice video which we've posted on our LinkedIn. I would encourage all to go and check that out and see it. So our engineering team came up with a very simple contraption, which is costing less than $50 for a truck chassis. And I'm very confident if the truck manufacturers start looking at it, they can do it even more cheap. Wherein you basically just have a small lever which goes in and attaches and locks the position of the lock. So the truck driver then knows that if he's moved it to unlock and sealed it, then it will not, due to vibration, shift back, which basically reduces the need for them to get off the truck and check whether it is in unlocked or locked position. This is something which will be working with JNPA and all the other authorities like the CFS Association of India and other partners whom we can leverage on to spread the word, because it is important. It creates our terminals and specifically the truck drivers coming in the terminal with a higher sense of security, and it is a must do.
I think that is a really wonderful way to get all the operations in totality, and then also working closely with the business partners, whoever is part of the system, and then tweaking small things which will really contribute to the overall efficiency of your operations. Wonderful.
Thank you.
That leads to me another question, maybe which is linked to the processes that we are talking about. See, for the last 2 years, 2022 and 23, APM Terminals has been, I think, the best performing terminal in terms of throughput and efficiency. Maybe because of this upgradation, slightly throughput could be hampered. But what I wanted to understand is, apart from equipment, a lot of things contribute to the efficiency, right? People, processes. So can you give me what are the unique things that in achieving this kind of efficiency that APMT has done?
As you correctly said, sir, there, it's down to three things, right? People, processes, and systems. And we actually spend a lot of time, and this is part of the APMT global culture, and we call it our lean way of working, where we're focusing a lot on the people. This is following the old Kaizen concept and in our own structure, ensuring that every colleague in the terminal, and it's called Lean for All, go through the concept of identifying waste in any work that they're doing. Waste is anything that does not contribute to a benefit to the customer, right, at the end of the day. So in a part of the process, if they're doing something which is waste, a frontline operator is capable of seeing it, identifying it a lot better than us sitting in an office, because we are not there where the Gemba is taking place all the time. Empowering them and training them to identify waste and then problem solve and come up with solution. That is actually at the heart of our way of working and one of the key for our efficiency journey. We have almost all frontline colleagues and of course office colleagues at APMT who've gone through different levels of what we call lean training, which is providing them with tools and techniques to both identify waste, then go into problem solving mode and come up with solution. And we as the leadership team, we are the biggest supporters in this. And our biggest job is to then ensure that all the solutions that they are coming in with, how can we allow and help them to actually enable and implement that? So that's from a culture perspective, which is in my books, the foundation that drives towards this. The second, again, here comes the opportunity or the that you get of being part of a global terminal portfolio that you can share best practices. A lot of best practices which are technology driven is also used in terms of increasing our efficiency. So identifying problem, but solving problem also through technology. We have something called asset digitization, which we are very, very proud of. All our assets, and that's our equipment, are actually connected with a system which is called asset digitization. So in our planning room, which is like a control room, you can actually sit and observe what's happening on each and every part of the terminal in real time. So for example, if you see the TTs, right, the internal trucks, that's the conveyor belt that is actually providing the containers to the cranes which are working on the vessel. We keep on focusing on the crane moves per hour, gross moves per hour, berth moves per hour. But in order to increase the productivity there, the smoother this conveyor belt works, the better will be the productivity and the efficiency. Now, how can we have a track of how much these movements are taking place? Where is the waste in this movement? Your yard strategy, your TT movement strategy, all of these actually contribute towards that. Now with this AD, or as we call it, or asset digitization, we can see where are the bottlenecks. Is it in a particular block in the yard because a certain RTG has a lot more moves given to them or a lot more work given to them, which is actually disrupting this conveyor belt? How can we make it smoother? That is the constant focus and problem solving that is going on within the office to enable better movement in the front line. So that's the second part. And definitely when it comes to system, right, the system is used to also train our operators. We have our own simulator in the terminal. So all operators, apart from being on the crane, actually go through simulator training so that we can standardize the way they are actually operating on the crane. So there's a lot of investment that we do with regards to that. And we have to say we have probably the best operators in the vicinity, because just about a month and a half back, we did something called Mission 200 at the terminal. We took it as a big challenge. It was the middle of the monsoons, right? And we were working only with 5 cranes. We had a service coming in which had almost 4,300 moves on it. I forget the exact number of moves. We wanted to ensure that we turned the service around and achieved what we call 200 port moves per hour. That is from the time the service calls us till the first lock-in, first move, to the time the service actually sails out. If you average it out, we will do 200 moves per hour. In order to do that, all our 5 cranes needed to operate more than 40 moves, crane moves per hour, which meant we could not afford to have any equipment malfunction, equipment breakdown, but all of these conveyor belts had to work supremely, as smooth as possible. And of course, we had a huge dependency on our operators, who are the rock stars, to deliver that. And we're very proud that we were probably one of the first gateway terminals with only 5 cranes to deliver that within the APMT portfolio in that. And that is a big achievement. So our people is another key reason which allows us to be on this journey.
Wonderful. That is very interesting to know. And now green is the buzzword, sustainability, sustainable operations. What kind of sustainable initiatives you have at APMT?
We have a lot of things going on. So there's also the decarbonization drive. What's your view? And it still holds good in my mind where he said, this is not one of those business commitments, but this is an existential commitment. And it is a commitment to the community, commitment to the society, and we have to deliver on it. Before I go into APMT, keeping in mind it is only fresh off the news and so close, I have to say that we're very proud as APMT to be part of the Maersk group, wherein Maersk, the group last week, had the naming ceremony of the first green methanol container vessel, Laura Maersk, to be put into operation. So it's very a proud moment for us. And also Maersk as a group, along with APM Holding, announced the launch of a company called C2X, which will be looking at supplying a huge quantum of green methanol, production. And they would be based in a number of countries, and India being one of them, right? Very closely associated with the government's green hydrogen initiative. So that's of course from the larger group perspective, a moment of pride for all of us. From APM Terminals Mumbai or GTI, the way we approach it is on three buckets. The first bucket is reduce. There's a huge amount of carbon emission. How does that come? It comes from basically when the equipments are being used. If I can operate my equipment more efficiently, reduce the running hours through efficiency, reduction of waste in the process, then I will by default also be contributing towards the reduction of carbon emission. So that is something which is also very much in our focus. So all the efficiency drive that we do, that is also keeping in mind the carbon emission and our intent to reduce the carbon emission. The second is, of course, replace. So we have a number of equipment in the yard today which are diesel operated. We have the RTGs which are diesel operated. We have our ITVs, the internal trucks, which are all diesel operated. This is where we have the opportunity to replace. Last year, we worked with Siemens on a project and we hybridized two of our RTGs. So they basically became battery operated. This is the project was very successful. It helped us cutting down the emission on those individual RTGs by more than 50%. We are now at a crossroad to decide what will be the next step, right? Do we look at hybridizing all the RTGs or do we look at going eRTG? But it is something that we are evaluating and we will work out in due course, because if we want to go eRTG, then it also involves a lot of civil work, again, operational disruption. And now that we are restarting, we will focus on it, but probably as a next step. But if you go by the count of equipments on the terminal, then the ITV, the internal trucks, is the highest count. And they are all operating on diesel today. So we are already in discussion with a few companies to try and see if we can do a trial run of e-ITVs, e-trucks. This also needs trial run because we have to understand how it will work. How much stoppage will it have? Today, we know exactly how it works with a diesel truck in terms of how often do you need to fuel it, how much time it takes to fuel. In this case, we need to know how often will it actually work with the workload, how much time it will need to recharge, what are the proper thoughts or of swapping batteries that we can have, whether we work with JNP on having a common setup, whether each terminal goes independently. So that's a very strong discussion that we are taking as well to understand how we go into that journey. Of course, things which are very easily under our control, our utility vehicles are that run, which are the smaller vehicles. We have already started the journey of converting them into e-vehicles. So that is with regards to the replace. Then there is the third part, which is reuse or renew, right? Which is where you focus on renewable energy. I'm happy to inform you. In fact, later this week, we will have the formal ceremony on Thursday in New Delhi, where we have now partnered with O2 Power to actually set up a captive, invest in a captive power plant, which will be supplying us with 21.7 million units annually of green electricity. This will be located in the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra. Once this is up and running, which should be within a period of 8 to 10 months since signing, and we've just signed it last week officially, this will reduce the carbon emission by 44% of all our electrical equipments. Today, we consume almost 26 million units of electricity, and that leads to almost 18 metric ton carbon emission. And we're looking at reducing that by 44% in 8 to 10 months' time.
That's wonderful. On that note, Sunay, it was a very interesting conversation, not only interesting, exciting. Going by what I understood from you, there's a lot happening at APMG, and I wish you all the best with all the initiatives that you have taken up. Thank you very much for joining us and sharing a lot of insights into APMG operations.
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure. Thank you very much.